Dr. Dan's Freedom Forum is on the air.
Good evening. This is Dr. Dan, and this is Freedom Forum Live, streamed Tuesday evenings, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Facebook, X, YouTube, and Rumble. Most of us can make rational choices between good and evil based on the advice of parents, teachers, pastors, and friends. Human beings, like us, have the ability to resist temptation. Apex predators do not. An apex predator is an animal at the top of its natural food chain, one that hunts other animals, but as a healthy adult, has no significant natural predators of its own. Humans through intelligence, cooperation, and technology, not physical strength. The apex predators we're going to be talking about, they are the true apex predators from strength and cunning that they have naturally inbred in them. The newborn animals of the American West enter a world in which survival is immediately contested, a landscape shared with apex predators such as wolves, bears, mountain lions, and coyotes, each of which are prepared to exploit the brief vulnerability of new life. As part of a federal and state endangered species program, these apex predators have been purposely introduced into areas that are home to regular folks like you and me, cattle ranchers, game animals, and recreational facilities. Not only do these apex predators kill newborn game and livestock, but they also endanger the safety and lives of ranchers, hikers, and recreational visitors to national parks and forest lands. As illogical as it sounds, apex predators are protected by the federal government as endangered species. So, in effect, conservation has become predation management. To bureaucrats, predation management means an acceptable amount of collateral damage. You know what that means. The financial loss is enormous, not just for ranchers, but for all other support sectors of the financial community that depend on ranching, tourism, hunters, and recreational activities to remain in business. Given these facts, why would our government introduce apex predators of any type into the geographical? Why would they introduce of any type into geographic areas where people live, recreate, and engage in commercial activities like farming and ranching? Moreover, why would the people at risk be prohibited from protecting themselves, their families, and their livestock from physical harm and even death caused by apex predators? The answer can be explained by one image, and I'm going to show you that image now. This is the Wildlands Treaty map. The Wildlands Treaty is a United Nations initiative, a part of the UN's mission to establish one world socialist governance. Fortunately, the treaty was not ratified by the Senate in 1994, but it has been enacted piece by piece in a clandestine fashion by every administration since then, in using NGOs and environmental activist groups that are funded by the wealthy elite. If you looked at that map, there was all red and yellow in that map. Those are areas that human beings cannot inhabit. Get that? Most of the United States, they want us to be relegated to tiny little cities. So the goal of that Wildlands Treaty of the United Nations is to kill millions of people through war and starvation and herd those left into high rise cities in which every aspect of our lives is controlled by United Nations totalitarian dictators. So,
And he's got me muted.
so, where are we? I got to get my people back. There you are. Okay. Yes, we are back. My guests tonight on Freedom Forum Live are three desperate ranch wives. Laura Schneeberger.
Now I'm not muted.
Yeah, lives in New Mexico. Ginger Cheney and Barbara Marks live in Arizona. They are courageous cattle ranchers from the southwest area of America, whose everyday life involves protecting their herds and our national food supply from the Mexican wolf. So, thank you all for being a guest on Freedom Forum Live. Go
Thank
ahead.
you.
Say something.
Thank you. It's good to
All
see
right,
you,
so
Dr.
listen.
Dan.
So look, I want to set the mood properly here.
There you go. That's awesome.
I wear this hat because for 25 years I bred, trained, and rode horses here. I was not a rancher, though. I don't have cattle. But I still have a hat, and you can see my sweat is on it.
Absolutely.
We sweated.
Hard work.
But I want you to understand that this sets the mood for tonight. And that mood tonight, and I'm going to get rid of that again, get my earphones on. But the mood tonight is very simple. We are sitting at the chuck wagon after a day of working our cattle, relaxing around the fire, talking cowboy and cowgirl stuff. That is what we are doing. So, you guys are all live right now. So I want you guys to tell us, first of all, start out one by one. Tell us. Someone's talking back there. Who is that?
That's my husband. Sorry.
Okay.
Mine showed up too.
Okay, that's fine. They could join in. I don't care, but they ought to get their face on here, don't you think? And I say, no face, no audio. That's what I say. But in any event, here we are. We're sitting around the campfire. We're going to be talking about cowboy and cowgirl stuff. But first, why don't you guys tell us about the history of your ranches? Tell us about what things used to be like before you were invaded by the Mexican wolf. Take your turns. Go ahead and talk.
You know, we were talking about this the other day. We were having so many different, we've been having wolf issues up on the mountain on our summer country. And in the past, before the wolves were introduced in 1998, we were able to take our cattle away from the mountain lions, coyotes, and bears that were here, and they would give us some problems, but we could take care of the problem. And then we'd take them to the mountain, and we'd really have a pretty peaceful summertime. Occasionally we would have an issue with a predator, and you would see the predators up there, but we also had quite a few elk and deer at the time. So then when they put the wolves in, it just, first rattle out of the box, the one pack, I can't remember if it was the Campbell Blue Pack or if it was the other one, that they had a group of our cows all rounded up in a small group. And and then they went down and they killed a neighbor's dog. The male dug underneath the fence and went in and killed this sweet little spayed female healer. And she was she helped with the cattle, but she also was the family pet, and their daughter used to dress her up. And, they went out and found her where the wolves had killed her. And just because they're territorial.
Well, and that's one thing I don't think a lot of people realize is, the wolf, the way the wolves interact and everything, it has changed the movement of our cattle, how the cattle use the land. But then another part of that is, when I was a kid, I had freedom. I got to do pretty much whatever I wanted to do. I could, walk to our neighbor's house, which was a mile away, or ride my bike or my horse. But with our children, you don't feel safe going out. Now, that being said, let me tell you, I've been chased by a mountain lion, stalked by a bear, so I wasn't completely innocent in everything, but with, the wolves and the packs, there are instances up on the mountain where children have been cornered, and there's just a lot of bad things that are going on.
Right. I think that I had 2 daughters and they were relatively young when the wolves came over here, but they played in the creek. They were, adventurous, and they would ride their horses, and they would get out from the house about half a mile, maybe more. And by the time my son came along, and they were about 10 to 15 years older than him, there was no way I was letting him out of the yard. We had, interestingly enough, the Campbell Blue Pack came over from Barbara's place and localized on us all winter long. And we are halfway into New Mexico. They came that far. And we were the first ranchers in New Mexico to actually get a pack move in on us. And they came 150 miles just to find a spot that was fun to be at, and wintered on us. And everything changed for us. Our son was not allowed to grow up out in the woods and having a good time and riding his horse and doing whatever he did like the girls were able to when they were younger. And of course, things kind of slowed down for them too. Both of them have been stalked by wolves horseback, and they aren't the only ones. I don't know a single person who has had these wolves on them in the entire wolf recovery area that hasn't had an incident up close and personal with a wolf pack. Now, they seem kind of cowardly most of the time, but if you're by yourself out there, or the kids are horseback or something like that, we have had some pretty shocking incidents that nobody seems to want to do anything about or acknowledge actually exist. And I think that's part of the problem. Part of the reason it's so good to be here and talking to you is that we can get this message out and tell the truth about what's going on in this program that is not put out in the media and all of the propaganda from the NGOs.
What's interesting is that they introduce a pack, a small number of wolves, and it's like the wolves are going to stay there and they're not going to make more. I mean, that to me is just totally insane. Anyone who understands wild animals knows that that's a total lie and a total fantasy. And you just proved it. The one wolf pack that came in down in Arizona, and all of a sudden that wolves from that pack are over halfway into New Mexico. Wild animals don't have fences. They don't mind they go where the food is and and the more of them they are, the more they have to expand their territory. But one of the things I really wanted you to check just before you got into the wolf issue is all of you have been ranching families for generations. Isn't that true?
Mm-hmm.
How far back do your ranches go?
Oh, gosh.
Ours goes, go ahead.
You go ahead. It's your turn.
Ours goes to 1891, and mom's 4th, I'm 5th, and my children are the 6th generation.
And they had actually, the Jones brothers had actually come into this area in 1887, I believe. Excuse me. And but the Apaches were still a factor, so they went back to Magdalena and ranched there for a while before moving out here in 1891.
Lord?
Well, my family came from Texas when the Browns and Crumleys moved to the Buckhorn and Cliff Gila area of New Mexico, and probably wasn't the the best exodus from Texas, if you know what I mean. They probably were running from the law. Some of them, half of them were good. Half of them were maybe not so clean. But yeah, we have been out here. My family's 6th generation probably, and my husband's family is 4th. And we have this little ranch here that has been in his family since the 50s.
So the point really here is that this is not something that you started a decade ago. There's a history. Your ranches have a history of over 100 years, really. And that is what's so important to me, is that's America, the American tradition of those ranches being there for decades and decades, passed down from generation to generation to generation. And what's going on now threatens to ruin that tradition and that wonderful true American tradition that you guys have. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Oh, it's infuriating. It is absolutely infuriating, and there's just no getting around it. We have spent, 30 years, Barbara, trying to deal with having equity in the management of this program, and there just is none. They just do not take into consideration the generations it took to build these places and what we want to leave to our children. It's just being dismantled systematically.
And the hard part with that too is, I'm just tired, and, I know mom and dad are tired. Lori is, and so the kids see us, going and fighting and doing all these things every day, whether it's meetings or whatever the case may be. And who wants to take that over? There's just a lot going on that, I hope that my children will want to, but, at the end of the day, you're just exhausted because of everything that goes on. And, with this program, the goalposts continue to move. Originally it was 100 wolves. And then we started getting very close to the 100 wolves. And then all of a sudden we came up with our magic, 320. And we're just always just a little bit short of that number. And, it's just all the little things that keep adding up that, we should have been managing the wolves, 200 wolves ago.
Well, how can they actually know how many wolves there are?
They don't have a clue.
They don't.
No.
And our people on the ground acknowledge that. And in fact, we're going to be losing a couple of our people, and it seems to go that way. We'll have somebody in who is managing this area, but still underneath Fish and Wildlife Service. And so they're with Arizona Game and Fish, but they get so frustrated themselves, and they get to the point where it's like, I can't take this anymore. And so they leave, and then we have to break in somebody new, and we're about the only thing that remains constant.
Right.
Well, and the agency doesn't really want their employees to become part of the local community, because then they get empathy for the ranchers, and they just can't hardly justify what they're doing for a living anymore. We've had several employees that have just tendered their resignations and went on to different things because they just don't like it. That tells you everything you need to know about the validity of the program and how things are going.
Well, that's a good point, because we have the same thing in all different levels of law enforcement here. For instance, the state police. They never let the state police from our local area be stationed in our local area for that very, very reason. But one of the things that's important, I think people need to understand, how you have a herd to protect. These animals pretty much are nocturnal, aren't they, for the most part? They probably are around during the daytime, but you have to worry a lot at night, don't you? So what do you do as ranchers to protect your herds? What are you now have to do that you never had to do before?
I don't know. Do you guys want to start, or do you want to just let me show my
ahead.
crazy.
You go ahead because you got us started. So
Yeah, I'm sort of a bad influence on these two
Yeah,
girls. I sent them two of my pups a year ago, and so they're getting the hang of things. But what I do is I have a little camp outfit and about 9 giant dogs. And when I see that there's wolf pack sign coming in, tracks, you know, anything that's happening with the cattle or the cattle are acting up, I get about 4 dogs and I go out and camp in the cattle at night, whether it's in a tent or when I first started out, I just grab a tarp and a bedroll and go out with them and bring the dogs with me, and they would guard me and guard the cattle. It seems to be helping. We still have losses, but we don't have the losses we had, but that's the extremes that grandma has to go to make sure we're not having them kill yearlings on the ridge behind the house where we can hear them from our bed. And that's where we were at. And I think we would have gone out of business if that had gone on much longer. But it's been about 5 years since we went ahead and we're raising these dogs. And they were the first pair were gifted to us, and they weren't that well behaved. But they did do the job. They marked the territory. And it's an extreme situation that we all live with down here. You won't hear about it with, the glossy pictures in the news media, but it is an absolutely extreme situation. And hopefully, I'm just praying and hoping that the situation the Marks family are in can be mitigated this way too. But they have had wolves in denser numbers than we have for quite a bit longer. So it's going to take a little bit more time and effort and get their dogs going, I guess. But I don't know how it's going to work over there. But that's how it's been working for me.
Well, and that was one thing, we had some collared wolves that were in our cows. And so I took the dogs out and we were out marking and doing what they're supposed to be doing, trying to haze those wolves out of our cattle. And while I was out, and this was actually during the day, the wolves came in and killed a calf at the house while we were gone. And so, it's just, and literally, we live in a huge canyon. And these wolves can travel from rim to rim in about 2 hours, and you're hard pressed to drive that on one of the roads. And so, the country's so vast that you can't keep up with it all. But, the dogs, I really have enjoyed, and I appreciate Lori getting us started, and I've enjoyed my time doing that. But we also, when we have problems with wolves, we'll help pack in food caches because where we live is very remote and you can't use any kind of mechanized equipment in our winter country. And so I've helped pack in food caches to try to keep the wolves off of our cattle. And last year, the pack that we were packing for was 7 wolves, and we were not able to pack enough meat to keep those wolves fed for the whole week. However, it did greatly reduce our losses when we started doing that. And so, we bring our cattle in. Mom and Dad were getting absolutely hammered by an uncollared pack this year. And so we brought our cattle in to the ranch, and we're feeding them to try to mitigate the livestock wolf conflicts. And we lost several on our private land. But with that, some of the other effects, they're so far reaching. We ended up, because of the stress, our cattle started getting pneumonia. And, we talked to our vet about it. We went through a whole bunch of stuff. We lost a couple of cows. We had a lot that were sick. And he said, well, it's a stress from the wolves and the other predators too. But, the main stress comes from those. And so it's not just the losses from the wolf kills. It goes far beyond that.
Well, and then there are their digestive systems when the mothers, or before they've had their calves, when they're fighting the wolves off, it will it upsets their digestive system, throws it out of balance, and they will die from that. Mm-hmm. And what you have to do is you have to give them a shot of antibiotics, of penicillin in their rumen, and then you have to every day give them probiotics and
pray.
Yeah, and pray a lot. And you can save some of them, but we've had others that they just, they die. And the vet, this one vet in particular, he's over in Silver City. And so he's been dealing with wolf injuries, etc., and what we've been dealing with the cows. And so he's very familiar with wolves and what they can do. And that's the first thing he says is, well, it's the stress from the wolves.
So let me just understand something here. You said some wolves are collared and some are not. What's the difference?
Well, they try to get 1 to 2 collars per pack, but that involves trapping or the helicopter, because they usually do helicopter rounds every spring. And so they try to do that, but they've got, like last year, we had that pack of 7, and one of the wolves was removed, and the pack just kind of blew up. And so now we've got, several new formed packs on us, and we've only got 1 pack that has a collar, and we've got at least 2 that don't have any collars within that pack. And in Arizona, the trapping is so restrictive that, it's really hard for the wildlife services gentlemen and, personnel to be able to trap. And then it's always, it's time for them to have puppies, and we can't trap because there might be puppies. And, their hands get tied every time we turn around. And so we've got wolves everywhere without collars. So we don't know how many or where they are.
When Lori sends out the map that's from the Fish and Wildlife Service, and it shows the locations of all the collared wolves, and so
that
we'll
aren't
look
denning.
at that. Yeah,
The ones that aren't denning. If they're denning, they're not on the map. So
right, yeah, that's true. And and so they'll people will look at the map and say, oh, there's a great big open area there, so you don't have any wolves there. And it's like, no, that means that they're either denning or there are uncollareds there, and they have pushed the others out. So it's been an eye opener for a lot of people.
So there's really, when it comes to wolf behavior, whether they're collared or not, they're still wolves.
You're right.
Yes.
oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing majestic about them. They're pretty much pure evil. Yep. I was with a couple of girls last year, and they found the calf, and the calf was still bleeding. And I mean, these poor little animals are bit from head to tail. And, it's just, we just lost a cow in our field, and the wildlife services guy asked me, hey, what's your opinion? He hadn't been down here yet. And I said, well, she didn't die peacefully. And,
no.
You can see her. I mean, her head was wadded up, and I mean, it was horrific. I understand the circle of life, and I can respect a mountain lion. Bears are pretty nasty too, but there's nothing like a wolf as far as being brutal, ugly, nasty killers.
These cattle, and some of them aren't the most gentle, they will pin themselves to try and avoid the attack. We had a horse over here that was just down the canyon from us. He had a pack of 5 wolves on him. The family had gone to get groceries and spent the night. He ran for what looked to be 3 miles and pinned himself in his corral before they killed him, which doesn't happen fast. It takes 3, 4, 5 hours sometimes. It is not a gentle way to go. And sometimes they don't die, and they just stagger around with huge chunks eaten out of them. But we're supposed to be tolerant and coexist.
Well,
and
one thing that people don't understand is that these wolves, they kill, they'll bite, and they might not even break the skin, but they will bite an animal all over, and they start hemorrhaging underneath the skin in their muscle tissue. And so they slowly bleed to death. And then the stress, it causes a neuropathy. And so, like Lori said, it's just, and Ginger said, it's not kind. They're not efficient. They're quite inefficient. And it's just when the animal is dead and you peel back the hide and you see all of these these pinpricks, it looks like, and just the hemorrhaging in the muscles underneath it's really, really horrible. We had a dog that was attacked, and he was a big dog. When he was heavy, he'd weigh 100 pounds. And the wolves worked him over. 2 wolves, and one of them was pregnant, and she whelped 2 weeks later. He had a bump on his head that you could see right after the attack, and he had 4 fang marks in his hip. Well, then a few days later, all of these little scabs start coming up all over him, down his neck, on his head, down his legs, down his tail, everywhere. And one of the gals who worked with the project, she was a vet tech, and I knew the answer to it, but I said, "That's from the wolves, right?" She said, "Yes." And so here are all these just hundreds and hundreds of scabs on this big dog from where the wolves had bitten him.
You know, what's really concerning to me is how government officials can try to pass this off as not wolves. I mean, isn't that what they're doing? They actually try to make you prove that any death of any one of your cattle or dogs or horses, uh, you have to sort of prove that a wolf did it, and they like don't believe you.
Well, that's kind of the problem. You do have to get the right measurements, and that's a conversation that I've had with a certain group of people quite a bit, because, it's like the difference between civil law versus criminal law. And, for us, we have to do like criminal law. It's beyond any doubt that this is the wolf. We used to have 8 standards of evidence, and one of those standards was a fight scene. And so we could use the fight scene and, hemorrhage underneath, it's subcutaneous hemorrhage. Well, that's under the skin. Well, you pull the skin back, you can see that hemorrhage. Well, they wanted deep tissue hemorrhage for the longest time. And so, that's the first thing that gets eaten. And so you don't have the proof that they wanted. And so there were several that were just, huge fight scenes, one of the worst fight scenes anybody, including our investigators, ever seen, and had to go probable on it because he only had one tooth mark, but they literally gutted her across the canyon. You had running wolf prints in the mud and all over the rocks where she was. And it was, hopefully the standards are better now. We have been working on those. So hopefully
Right. They got a new
Yeah.
document out last week or
Yeah.
maybe 2 weeks ago, and hopefully we can go back, but the standards were changed to a bare minimum of evidence through an NGOs leaning on the agencies.
Right.
For
And now we're
Arizona
kinda
and New
going back.
Mexico.
Right. And you would think that the plethora of evidence that you can show would be enough, that just like in any kind of human criminal investigation, the more evidence that you would get, the better off you would be to prove an attack. But no, they just wanted the one thing to be present to cause a confirmation. So we went through 5 or 6, 7 years of barely getting confirmation. So when the agencies and the organizations tell you, "Oh, wolf kills are down," they weren't. Confirmations went down due to improper standards. And we had the same thing. We had, kill sites that were so obvious, just looked like the whole forest floor is torn up, that they go round and round trees. There's blood spatters, but none of that mattered. They just wanted the subcutaneous hemorrhaging. So hopefully we have gotten past that now, and they're going to implement the regular normal standards again. But that's the kind of thing we have to deal with these 8 organizations that have no skin in the game, getting political points to join in and and pretend that they're stakeholders when they're really not.
Well, the thing is, I mean, what do they tell you? You come upon dead carcasses, so like the pictures and everything that we've seen. What do they think caused that? Like a swarm of mosquitoes bit the cow all over the place. I mean, what? Who in their right mind, with a straight face, can say this is not an apex predator type of attack? I mean, how is that possible? I mean, that's
Well,
number one question, but go ahead. I have number two, but go ahead and answer that. I mean, how can these people say that's not a wolf that did that? Who else would do it?
Well, they want to blame it on lions or bears, and we have plenty of lions and bears, and we had, you know, we lose animals to them as well. I'm not saying everything we lose is to the wolves, but you know, like I said, that you know it's kind of like cow CSI. I mean, every time I go out with these guys, I learn
Yeah.
something new, you know, and so you know, I feel that I'm pretty good at investigations at this point, just because I've been on so many with them.
Same.
And, yeah. And so, you know, but they're always, you know, wanting to put it on one of the other predators, you know, just to make the program look better.
But why does that matter? If a predator kills your cow, it's still a predator that killed your cow. Are all of these animals protected?
No, it goes back to money. And so, you know, like with the lions and the bears, you know, there's no reimbursement for lion or bear kills. However, like last year, we had a lion that came in and killed a calf, and so I got a hold of our wildlife services guy, and we went out and we were able to, you know, take that animal because it was a stock killer, and so you get a depredation permit. And so, you know, with the lions and the bears and the coyotes, well, the coyotes, you don't get depredation. You can just take care of them. But with the lions and bears, you can get depredation permits if they are killing your animals. With the wolves, you know, you just sit back and take
Nothing.
it pretty much.
Mhm.
Right.
Absolutely
Well, and the
nothing.
thing is that the wolves are putting pressure on these other predators to kill more and more. And then the wolves are also stealing the food caches of those animals. So yesterday, when my husband and I took a couple of loads up to the mountain, and I saw two smaller groups of elk, cow elk, and there were up to 10 maybe in each group. I saw one calf. I saw a doe.
Yeah. There's no babies.
But then
Nope.
they're talking about changing behavior. They're changing the behavior of the elk as well. And a lot of the elk and deer, but primarily the elk that are around Alpine and Nutrioso, some of these smaller communities that have fields in the middle of them, they're staying there. They stay there all summer. They don't go up to the summer country. And
All
then
day too.
yeah. And then the wolves, some of the wolves will be going in there and giving everybody an education on how they kill or don't kill something.
So if you prove that one of your calves was killed by a wolf, what does it matter to you? In other words, what does that do for you?
Well, you can fill out a Bible's worth of paperwork for a Farm Service Agency, get that report in from Wildlife Services that shows it's a real kill, and they might reimburse you 75% of that loss, not including vet bills, and or they might not. They've been pretty good, but you have a ton of paperwork and a lot more work to do on top of, you know, chasing wolves out and regular cow work, which all of our husbands do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we just all have new careers. They're just unpaid.
There are group, like New Mexico has a group that will pay for pay compensation as long as they get money from the legislature. Arizona has a group too, through the Arizona Game and Fish Department. But once again, it's money that's allocated by the government, and more states are getting wolves, and the money doesn't get any bigger. We're just getting more hands into the pot. And so they usually run out of money. And so it's, it is financially, significant to be able to get those. But the problem is where we live, it's so rugged that, there's studies that say that for every one you find, there are 7 that were killed that you never find. And that's pretty close to the truth, especially with the calves. And so,
No body, no crime.
yeah, it's no body, no crime. There's nothing that you can do about it. In fact, last year when we found the calf that was bleeding, I had 3 cows that were tight bagged and leaking milk out. And so I let them out of the corral after I got everything corralled. And they took me right up on top of this mountain, and you could see this huge fight scene. And I actually had wolf points. I had GPS wolf points right there, but there was no body. I mean, they ate the calves, and they will consume the whole calf. And so, that was 3 that we weren't able to do anything about.
So obviously, and we talked about it earlier, but this whole problem has changed the way you live.
Right. You can't go to the doctor. You can't take care of your sick parents. You can't have your grandkids over and actually be able to spend time with them. You have a full-time, unpaid, extra job that you wouldn't be able to pay someone else to do because you have less income than ever before. Your entire life is wrapped up. We're basically enslaved to the wolf program.
Yeah.
Do you guys feel enslaved sometimes? How's your recreational life going and your social life? My mother died and I couldn't spend time with her. I mean, that's how it is for people. All you can do is do your duty by your livestock to ensure that they have the best, most wholesome life possible. And if there's something really necessary, you go do it and you take the loss.
That's terrible. That really is criminal.
It is.
Want to hear something else that's criminal?
Sure.
There was a gentleman who shot a wolf in Colorado accidentally a few weeks ago, and they have just assessed him a $150 fine because he mistook it for a coyote. If that were to happen to me, we would lose our entire ranch. People with grazing allotments are held to a much different standard in this program than John Q. Public. The worst that can happen to them is they might lose their ability to apply for a game license for a little while. They may pay a $2,000 fine. I'm not advocating that they get treated worse. I'm okay with them shooting the occasional wolf. You learn to be. But why do we have different standards? It seems kind of unconstitutional to treat us differently.
Well, it is, of course, but the question in my mind is, why are you not allowed to protect your families and your herds from predation? You have predators there. For me, it's no different than someone breaking into your house for home invasion.
No, it's really not. And I think that we've done a couple of proposals that we've sent to the new administration, Fish and Wildlife. We've asked for certain things. It seems logical to me that now that they're up above 300 wolves, that they would be able to do enough policy change to allow us to protect our stock when we know, especially since they took away removals of problem wolves about a decade ago, and every single pack out there is cattle is a big part of their diet now. So they've literally grown the population the last few years off the backs of the ranchers and off of their cow herds. They've used it as a prey base. Prior to that, you'd have 3 cow kills, they'd remove 1 or 2 wolves. And they may put them back out later, but they would remove them for a time. They don't do that anymore. They just leave them as long as possible. And shockingly, they're starting to mitigate a little bit, but it's not enough. They have let it go for so long now with cattle being part of the prey base that the vast majority of these wolves on the ground are stock killing wolves and habitual stock killing wolves, as the Marxists will tell you.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of at a loss because this to me is so wrong.
You know, that makes me feel better because I feel like it's wrong. I feel like it's crazy and no one else has to live like this.
Well,
So it's good to know.
Well, that's the point. I mean, around here, I mean, we have the right to protect ourselves from people who want to harm us. We have North Carolina has a castle doctrine. You know, you come in my house, you don't belong there. You're going to go out horizontally and perfectly. I'm not going to get in trouble for it because the law says I have the right to protect my family. You have the right to protect your families and your properties and your herds and things like that. But apparently, you're not able to exercise that. That to
The
me
endangered
is,
species won't allow us to do that. There
yeah.
needs to be some change.
Well,
Yeah.
and need to remember that it is an experimental, non-essential species population. So it's, it's under the 10J. I mean, that is its title's experimental, non-essential, and yet it is awful.
It's treated as fully endangered.
Yes.
Mhm.
But
And it
something.
Go,
Go
Barbara.
ahead.
Good.
Well, something else. It's a mountain lion came into our son and daughter-in-law's front yard and grabbed their one daughter's basset hound puppy and took it out and ate it. And they were told by the Game and Fish Department, oh, well,
It's not livestock.
it's not livestock. And, and then our county administrator, he said he used to be the county attorney, and he said, man, he said, I have gone round and round with the Game and Fish Department because you have the right to protect your private property, and that includes your pets, etc., and definitely your livestock, and of course yourselves. You have that right. So I haven't had a chance to talk to him and say, so how can we pursue this?
Right.
And of course, we don't have money. We don't have the money that the NGOs do. And because that's, they're green groups and it's green for money. And that's how they make their livings, off of lawsuits. And it's gotten so far out of hand.
Yeah, it really has. One of the things that really bothers me is the on-the-ground population of Mexican wolves currently is redundant. It is the same few genetic lineages that they have a few more special wolves in captivity, and they need a lot more of those out, or this is going to be a failed program. They won't have the genetic diversity to succeed at all. And that's after 30 years and feeding all the pups and putting them in the dens and blah, blah, blah. They're still micromanaging these wolves after almost 30 years. But if they don't do something genetically, these wolves will fail anyway. And it is a money source that has gone into this program that is going to be unredeemable. They won't have anything to show for it. So why aren't they taking out problem wolves, putting in new genetics, and protecting us a little bit better, plus allowing us to protect our private property? It could only help the program in the long run. Can't do it. The NGOs won't let them.
So that's a very interesting point that you just raised. And a problem wolf. You identify a problem wolf, and you aren't. To me, all wolves are a problem. I mean, how do you know? Oh, that guy over there, he'll eat 10 cows this month. That one over there, he doesn't like cows. He's a vegetarian. He's going to eat shrimp. He's going to eat trees. I mean, how do they? What? This is completely.
There's an There's an actual definition, and I can't think of it off the top of my head, but Ginger's got a better brain, and maybe she can give you the actual definition of what they call a problem wolf.
I can't, just with experience, with the, like you'll have a certain pack, let's say the Campbell Blue pack, and, they'll have points on them. And so they'll say, okay, the cow was killed here. And so then their points are right there. So they'll give that, give credit to that pack. And so, but we've come across, they'll have a pack and then they'll say, well, we need to remove one, but we can't remove this one because they're genetically significant. And it'll be like the alpha male or the alpha female, the one that's teaching all the little ones to, it's like, well, if they're their offspring, aren't they genetically significant too? But on the genetically significant part, something that, when the wolves were captured in Mexico and it was one female and her, 4, 5, 6 sons.
Yeah, she had about 4 puppies. They were all male and they bred her to them.
Yeah, so the family tree doesn't fork to begin with. So how's anything genetically significant except for like that one that they caught down in Cochise County that looks like exactly like a dog? But she was genetically significant, but she looks exactly like a dog.
On the Ghost Ranch and the McBride lineage. The McBride was the original caught out of Mexico that you just described. Then they had Aragon, which came out of the zoo. But the Ghost Ranch, they wouldn't allow in the captive breeding population to begin with because it had so much dog DNA in it, curly tails, blue eyes, all of that. Well, one of the geneticists decided, we better do something. We won't even be able to start this program because were literally extinct. But they decided to put Ghost Ranch in. And so now we have dogs, wolves that literally look like little dogs, but they're the special ones that have the good genes that are a little more diverse. So,
and then Dave Parsons went in there and he brought in the Aragon lineage and said, oh no, they're wolves. And yeah, and Roy T. McBride, he said, no, those are not. And they said, oh, well, we got rid of all those. And then we got some others. It's like,
right.
Okay,
there's a letter from Roy McBride, the trapper, for the original Mexican wolves that they got in Mexico. And he fought the introduction of the Ghost Ranch lineage into that captive breeding program. He fought it tooth and nail. And the wolf biologist just said, nah, we won't have a program if we don't have all 3 lineages.
You know what this sounds like? I want to tell you what this sounds like. This sounds like a lab experiment like we did with salamanders in high school. Breeding them, to see if we could get some brown ones, some multicolored ones, and some black ones, and mating them together. The difference, of course, is salamanders don't eat cattle. They don't eat human beings. What they're doing, basically, is they're doing a lab experiment on your nickel and my nickel, too. But they're doing a lab experiment in your backyard, and you are suffering for it. And I don't see why it matters which wolves survive or not. It just...
You won't get an argument from me. That's how I've seen it for the past 30 years. And I'm sure Barbara doesn't have an argument with it either. That's just how it's been. And now we're starting to watch it happen in California, in Colorado, they're starting to see wolves in Nevada. Oregon is really bad. None of these real issues ever come to the forefront of education or media or anything. So.
Well, in one of our meetings, the NGOs were talking about how much they wanted the northern wolves to come down and breed with the Mexican wolves to add to that genetic diversity. And I looked at our fish and wildlife guys that were there and I said, well, they would no longer be Mexican wolves, right?
Right.
And they're like, no, they wouldn't be Mexican wolves any longer because
no more subspecies.
Those more subspecies. And I said, so, what's going to happen when that happens? Oh, we don't want that to happen. Well, it's already, the wolves are going north and those are coming south. But, that's the next thing that's coming down. And the green groups want these wolves for the genetic diversity to come into our Mexican wolves. But then, they're no longer a Mexican wolf. So
So
know,
they play
that's
this game
something
30 years with their special subspecies off of our backs, like you say, and yet they need genetic rescue so badly that they will no longer exist in 10 more years.
Lori, you remember when we were in on the first recovery plan? We were over there in Albuquerque,
I do.
and Michael Robinson was there, and he was actually nice and had taken a shower. Anyway, the big argument that they had, because they had the Fish and Wildlife Service biologists going, oh yes, and then when the northern wolves come down and they'll pair up with the Mexican wolves and we'll get some genetic diversity. And Roberto Wolf, the biologist from Mexico, he had a fit and just, that's going to ruin the genetics of it, and they won't be Mexican wolves. And all of us are just sitting there like little mice, watching little flies on the wall, listening, watching the whole battle go on. When we went to lunch, it's like, holy smokes, did you see what happened? And then the funny thing was that the NGOs shut down the recovery. That part of the recovery process, they shut down that what we were doing, what we were trying to come up with a document. And
yeah, it was the 3-year review, and they were looking at doing a new recovery plan.
Yeah, and it was they shut it all down, and then they did another one. I can't remember how many years ago.
I think that was in
then
05, and you and I were there too. They did it.
Yeah.
They were starting a recovery plan, and it didn't work well for the NGOs then, and they shut that one down through a lawsuit. But then they finally got a new recovery plan done, and you and I were left at the water hole.
That's right. They had representatives from the New Mexico cattle growers and Arizona cattle growers, people who did not have wolf experience. They
Or
had
background.
just right. They had hand-selected people, and it's like, it was, yeah.
So we ended up with this new recovery plan that allows them to eat as many cattle as they want and grow their puppies off of the ranchers. Totally different than the original recovery plan that we thought we couldn't live with that. And so what did they do? They doubled down, tripled down.
So the real question here is, what do any of these programs, in what way do they benefit the American people?
I haven't figured it out.
They cost money. They take food off of people's plates.
They ruin your homeland security, which is actually your food security.
Exactly.
So what would be the ideal situation or resolution to this entire problem? From a fantasy and from a realistic point of view, you can do both. Okay? Both are acceptable. You have to say that. Wait a minute. You guys have to say that one more time because you broke up. Say closer to the mic what you just said.
Okay. I said the wolves would be gone. That's best case scenario.
And I said, I live for that day.
I do too. I would love for these wolves to be gone. I am so tired of watching my neighbors suffer and seeing these cattle suffer. And my big dogs, when they get into a fight with them, and they do, they are injured. This is ridiculous. They have turned me into a dog fighter. I really feel like they've done that to me because when my dogs come in hurt, I'm horrified. But yeah, the wolves could be gone, but what we have asked for is within the confines of the law, because that's what we have. And what we have asked for is not unreasonable, I don't think, to be able to take care of our livestock, to be able to, when you catch a wolf pack killing calves, you should be able to lay for the ones that are doing it and take out 25% of that pack. The science says remove 25% of a depredating pack and it will stop it. They won't do any of that. They want the depredating packs.
And people don't realize that it's really difficult to even see these wolves
Oh yeah.
when they're in the act of killing your livestock. You know, they'll give you a permit to take a wolf, and we had one. We were the first one back in 2018 to be. They said if you see see a wolf or wolves doing, you know, attacking your animals, even out on the forest, you can kill that wolf. Well, we never saw them. We saw them on camera when they were feeding on the dead animals, and but we never saw them.
No, you don't
Yeah.
see them. Everybody tells you shoot, shovel, and shut up. And I just laugh because the first order of the day, if you want to do any of that, is see.
Yeah.
You're not going
Right.
to see the dang things when they're trying to avoid you. They know you're there long before you know they're there, which is why, you know, the dogs have been somewhat successful, is because the dogs hear things I don't, and they go straight to it. And so that's been useful for me. I still have kills, but because you can't be everywhere, and it's useful. It's a tool. It's an expensive tool. It doesn't help everybody, but both the Marxes and our family, we have high mountain ranches that are extremely rugged, and getting everywhere every day that you have to have your cattle is not possible. Even you can ride every day and check cows, and we do, and they do, and you're not going to see something 90% of the time. So
Okay, so here's what's good. Here's what's we're going to happen right now. I'm going to show just a short montage of pictures, okay, that you guys sent me. I'm not going to say anything while they're running. It'll be about 20 seconds, and then after we're done, I want you to make a final comment each, okay? So here we go. Okay, final thoughts.
I'll go first because I did send those pictures in, and something that people don't realize is that gray calf that had the horrible hemorrhaging, she was still alive when they found her. And the gal called and said, you know, hey, can you come help me with this? And I thought, oh, I can save her. And I just prayed, you know, please let this poor little thing die, you know. And then a couple of the other calves, their windpipe was crushed in the scarring. They eventually, you know, suffocated. And so, you know, these wolves are vicious, they're awful creatures, and it's completely changed our lives in a horrible way. And so I just hope people can realize and educate themselves as far as, you know, don't take what these groups say, you know, it's not all the truth. And so, you know, do your own research, find out what's going on, and, you know, stand up for what's right. And this is not right in any way, shape, or form. And thank you so much for having us.
That, you know, that first cow with the rakes all over her. We have her in the corral right now, and that was last year. That was last year, and it obviously it had thrown her digestive system out of whack. You could see by how thin she is. Her digestive system still isn't right, and it's just, it's, you know, the gift that keeps on giving. And just when you have animals die in your house because of the crushed skulls or different injuries, it's hard to take. It's really hard to take, and when it's so unnecessary. Why? Like you said, it was an experiment, and I really like that. that was a good point there. And thank you so much. Appreciate you.
I think that what people need to understand is they've taken a culture of people who live with cattle being out on the green pastures and grazing and providing a really valuable food source for the public and a really safe food source. And they have created a situation to where we live in a area that is nothing but death, maiming, and misery. And I believe that that was done deliberately because they literally want us off the land. We won't leave. We've just find ways to keep going because that's the kind of people we are. And you're looking at people who are actually doing things on the ground. We don't go and recreate and play and do things like that because we don't have time to do it. We commit to our livestock and we're out in it, figuring out what's going on. We're not going to lose this battle, but we are losing this entire culture from this. Not everybody's family has the grit and wherewithal to handle this kind of thing day in and day out. I've got people who are having surplus and spree kills and just don't know what to do anymore. There's no realistic management of these animals. We can pretend that we can coexist with fladry and the big purple thing at the car lot that waves around. You can pretend that that thing's going to work all day long. Those things have a shelf life of a couple of weeks each, but the burden of getting them up and moving is on us as well. What's the point of all of that? It's to buy more time to cause more damage. There is no scientific analysis of all of those non-lethal, what are they called? Non-lethal things that you have to try that says they work. There's nothing that says they work. And they didn't work in California last year. They tried and tried and tried with a couple of wolf packs killing cattle in California. They tried fladry. They tried the bobber thing. They had range riders out there. And range riders are a great tool, but they're just like the dogs. They can only be so many places, so much time. But you know what happened? They lost 80 head of cattle in one small area, and it never quit until they took out the wolf pack that was doing it, and then it quit. Lethal control is the only way, and if they won't implement it, then the goal is not to save these wolves. The goal is something else entirely. And thank you. This is what we need. We need to educate people on the actual reality of it, and we sure appreciate you going to all the trouble to put this together because the actual facts aren't getting out there. So thank you, Dr. Dan.
I am very, very blessed to be able to have you here. And it was a wonderful evening discussing something that needs to be discussed. People need to understand that we cannot allow the government to do things like this to us. That government is us. And we need more people to stand with us, stand up against what is going on now, because that's not the only thing the government is doing to steal our land, steal our livelihood. They want us off the land, and that's true. That's what that Wildlands Treaty is all about. They don't want us on the land. Why? Because if you're on the land, you're free. And if you're
independent.
Free, you're independent.
Yep.
So I want to thank you. God bless all three of you. It was
God
wonderful.
bless you too.
God bless you, and have a wonderful week.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Dr. Dan.
Thank you,
Good night.
Dr. Dan.
Good
All
night.
right. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.